Algebra 1, Catlin here with lesson 1 from your second unit. Lesson, we planned a pizza party and we wrote some expressions and we talked a little bit about variables. And so this cool down is really open-ended. There's quite a bit open for you to be creative here and create your own. So just stay within the limits of that. I would recommend keeping it simple, like I want to do in this example, but you could go all out here and get crazy with it as well. In this particular example, we have a reward for kids that have achieved their goal. For all the students in the ninth grade are going to get invited to this ice cream party. And so our job is to write an expression that could represent an estimated cost. That's important. We're just estimating here. We're not getting too specific. So I'm going to keep all my dollar amounts just whole numbers. And we need to use at least one letter or something that we don't know. Okay. And I'm going to keep this very simple. So this is the way that I've broken it down. I've done so the price for a gallon of ice cream. Now, the flavors can be different: vanilla, chocolate, strawberry, whatever. But I'm going to go with very basic, just saying $5. Okay. And then I kind of thought, well, you want to get all kinds of different toppings, syrups, stuff like that for the kids to put on their ice cream. So I'm just going to limit myself to and just call it toppings. And I'm going to say, okay, I want to spend $30 on toppings. So I'm going to put $30. All right. So that's kind of the way that I'm setting this up as an expression. Okay. Using those basic things. Now, I would base my number of gallons of ice cream bought depending on how many kids that I have. And I figure that, roughly a gallon of ice cream is probably going to be plenty for about 10 kids. But I'll determine that number later on. And that's why I'm going to have a variable included in mine, because my variable is going to be N, which is number of gallons that I'm going to purchase. And I'll determine what that is whenever I find out how many kids are actually going to be at the party. So that's my basic setup. So my expression that I would write would be simply this: 5N to represent my $5 I'm spending on each gallon that I'm purchasing. And then I'm going to add 30 for the toppings. So very simple, like I said, keeping it very simple. So the 5N here represents the $5 per gallon times the N, which is the number of gallons. So really, that product is telling me the price that I would spend on ice cream. And of course, I would get a variety of vanilla and chocolate, whatever. And then my 30 here is representing, money spent on toppings. And like I said, just estimating, keeping it simple. And then down here, choose a letter that's in my expression. Describe the values that would be reasonable for the quantity that the letter represents. So N is my letter. And I think N needs to be, it's buying ice cream, so it needs to be positive. We're not going to buy negative amounts of ice cream. It needs to be positive, and we're going to stay away from buying like half gallons or quarts. So we're just going to keep it whole. So it needs to be positive and a whole number. Now I could give it some more constraints, because that's what essentially you're doing here is you're giving N some constraints on what it needs to be, what it can't be. And you could limit yourself to spending so much money. So you could say something like, okay, I don't want to spend more than $100 on ice cream, and then 30 for the top. I don't want to spend more than $130. So you could say, well, let's keep in less than 20. I don't want to have to spend more than $100 on this ice cream party. So for just ice cream, and not alone even the toppings for 30 extra. So you could even say something like that. N needs to be less than 20 or equal to. Or if you don't want to be 20 as an answer, you leave the or equal to off there. But that's a constraint. So we've written an expression. We've talked about constraints using inequalities, and that's coming up as we start to write these algebraic equations and solve for them. And that should be enough to help you out with lesson 1. See you guys.